WNST, Towson, Baltimore, and Baltimore Positive. We are bringing the Maryland Crab Cake Tour out. Everywhere we have crab cakes here. My next guest will be salivating because they don't make them that way down where she is. But we're going to be at Fadley's this week having some crab cakes and mac and cheese. My dear friend Dan Roderick's lifer journalist and mentor to me and fishing partner for fly fishing will be our guest, as will Attorney General Brian Frosch of the state of Maryland. He's stepping down. We talk so much about the political season and what's going on there. And Thuru Vignaraju, who has run for mayor a couple of times, talking about all the issues in the city, as well as crab cakes and how they come to your table and all that good stuff, presented by the Maryland Lottery and our friends at Goodwill Industries. We call these wise conversations around here, and my friends at Wise Markets love that I try to take the higher ground on a lot of these things and bring all sorts of information in. This DeShaun Watson thing, we've been back and forth on the sports side and, you know, the Browns and guaranteed money and all that. But I got friends deep in the heart of Texas. Steph Stradley has covered all things Texans from the beginning of the Texans, when they played the Ravens in the beginning, and they were yelling all the last names, and I went there. All I wanted to do was go into the Astrodome when I went down there, because that's where the Bad News Bears did breaking training with Enos Cabell back in the day. She writes a blog, long-standing blog about the Texans and fandom and Texas culture and football and all of that good stuff. Her email is Texans Chick. So we welcome Steph Stradley back onto the program. She's a defending champion around here and blogging and writing for the Houston Chronicle, but also a lawyer as well, an attorney, and someone who I would think at any point, had I called you on this DeShaun Watson situation while he was still a member of the Houston Texans, that you would have had some strong opinions about this and covering things and being a journalist as well as an attorney down there. I had to bring you in, and obviously you've probably talked a lot about this and thought a lot about this. It's been at the forefront of everything that is Texans over the last year and a half, right?
Pretty much. Obviously I was getting a lot of questions about it because of the legal aspects of it. And so I ended up writing over like 6,000 words a year ago, just saying, hey, this is how this is going to go. These are things that you need to know if you are hearing things about this case. And really my point of view from the get-go is like, I don't want to talk, I didn't like to talk about it on Twitter because it's a very emotional subject that isn't really easy to talk about among friends and strangers, because everybody has their own view coming into it. And frankly, it's difficult. It's difficult to talk about that all the time because really sports is supposed to be fun. And clearly this is not fun for anybody involved.
The allegations that surround him and how it works with civil law and criminal law, and that so many teams were lined up to bring him in and piss off Matt Ryan and throw away guys that have been community guys and local guys and worn the flag and done all of that. Where are you on his reputation alone for females and for the Browns and what they're getting, not as a football player, as far as an incredibly damaged brand that comes at a point where they gave guaranteed money above and beyond anything that I'm going to the NFL owners meetings this week, Steph. I would think there are many of the owners in the room think that's just an irrational contract, even if he didn't have any of this going on.
Well, I mean, all of his issues aside, which are very serious, quarterbacks make people go crazy. Like if your team doesn't have a competent quarterback, your team is probably irrelevant. I mean, that's just how things are. And, there are teams that have gone decades without having a competent quarterback. So a quarterback who is 26, who excelled despite not having a running game, and for part of his time having one of the worst defenses in the league, obviously that gets people's attention. He had a no trade clause with the Texans that was negotiated by the previous GM. And so the situation was such where he didn't want the Texans and the Texans didn't want him. And so your leverage was limited. And so really the way things work is for him to waive the no trade clause gave him some leverage point. And so really they wanted to get the deal done before the draft because you wanted draft assets for this year, and that's what they got. So, I mean, now it's the Browns issue and the Browns issue to deal with. Like, they got some assets to deal with something that the Texans saw was a problem.
Well, just on a gender bias thing here, hearing men talk about football players and all of that. Last week, everyone was sharing a conversation online, and I know you haven't listened to it yet because we talked about it. But Mina Kimes, who I don't know anything about Mina Kimes. I don't really watch ESPN.
I love Mina.
No, I don't know her. I've never met her. I've never been in a room with her. I'm not like a fan, or I watch ESPN. Or I only know her from the internet and Twitter in that way. And I see her work and I follow her, and it's all good. And I see her podcast, and I know Jenny Varentis. I've known Jenny for a long time. And Jenny comes on the show whenever I ask, basically. And last week, my wife caught me doing something I like. She's never heard me do. I've never had my wife walk in and on my phone hear me listening to anything. I don't listen to music. I barely talk on the phone. And if I do, it's up to my ear. I'm not a speakerphone guy.
Yeah.
I'm not much of a phone guy. But I clicked on a podcast, which I make podcasts for a living. I create them. I throw them out. I listen to some, but very usually when I'm trapped somewhere with earbuds on, I just started playing it out loud to hear what the two of them had to say, because I have such respect for Jenny, and I respect Mina, even though I don't know her or know anything. But I listened, and my wife caught me listening to these two women chatting. Like, she came into the bedroom. She's like, "What are you listening to? Like, you don't listen to anything. Why are you listening to these two women? Like, what is this?" Like, she wasn't listening to it. She just heard me listen to two women talk. And I said, I know Jenny's been reporting this from the beginning. I know wherever she's reporting, I put gospel into that. I'm thinking this is an interesting conversation because there are no men involved, kind of like probably the way the abortion thing should be, where a bunch of men get in a room and decide what women should do. I don't dig that. So I wanted to listen, and I listened to 15 minutes of it, and I thought, well, I'm going to call Jenny. And eventually I thought you immediately after the deal went down this week to bring on voices. When I brought you on, you said, well, I probably heard a lot of the stuff that Jenny heard. You live in Houston. You are the Texan chick. People talk to you. Have you talked to any of these women?
I have not talked to any of these women. I have read, I've heard some of the accounts that have been made public. One of the women who did not file a lawsuit had an account on YouTube that she revealed in an interview. I've read all of the interviews that have been online. I've read all of the petitions filed by the plaintiffs. I mean, they're very serious charges. And the hard part about all of this is, and this case aside, I'm going to just talk generally, all high profile cases that I have been involved in, it's really difficult because the public conversation has snippets of it. It doesn't have the full view. And then sometimes the lawyers can't reveal everything about what's going on if there's ongoing litigation, or if there's concerns that it might complicate things. Like, like if you say, this didn't happen, these women are liars, for example, you could ask for a defamation lawsuit. So like everybody publicly has to be very careful about how they talk about it. And, the thing that I wrote last year was, I have a very difficult time, where people are trying to solve the case publicly based on what they know, because it's not all the information that is existing, and that the facts will go what the facts go. Like the facts that will come out are the facts that I guess everybody wants you to know eventually. And each case is different. Like the statistics on sexual assault are terrible about how often people report it. But that aside, every situation is specific, and it's okay to say, these are serious claims. You need to take them seriously. And at the same time, when somebody says, this didn't happen, I want my day in court, to also respect that, because as a society, it's not good if, there's a claim, it's tried in the court of public opinion, and maybe not the full facts are out. I probably have as good of information that the Browns do. I mean, I don't know that for a fact, but I mean, I don't know.
Do you have enough information to not give him $230 million and bring him in and make him your quarterback today?
It's what I wrote in my piece, that everybody's level of comfort is different on that. I mean, frankly, a lot of teams would not want to give anybody that much guaranteed money.
Well, yeah, that's what I was going to say at the owners meeting this week. Like, everyone would just say that's a bad deal if it's Aaron Rodgers, if it's Patrick Mahomes. We don't do that here. That's part of the pact of the NFL, right?
His agency is called Athletes First. There is a drive in the NFL to say, hey, look, we don't have as strong of a union as other people do, and we're going to use whatever leverage the CBA lets us still have. And he used every bit of that leverage. Now, what people think about that as far as obligations and stuff is completely different. But going back to your first issue, I don't know if I have the full facts. What I do know is the only people that might gossip more than football people are lawyers. And what I feel comfortable talking about is, for example, the grand jury in Houston. They got to investigate all the information. Their standard for, whether they true bill a case or no bill a case was there probable cause that a crime was committed. They came out with a no bill, and the Harris County District Attorney's Office said, we're not going to be pursuing this further. So in the secret grand jury proceedings, at least that was their position. Now, does that mean that, he is innocent? Well, under the eyes of the criminal law, we're presumed innocent, just generally, right? Now, it may have been, and this is kind of implied, that, it was implied in the open hearing that was happened before the grand jury, where Watson's lawyer, Rusty Hardin, said that by pursuing the civil cases the way that they did, it complicated bringing a criminal trial. And that, if you bring a civil lawsuit asking for money damages and making it high publicity and high leverage, the way that, zealously representing his client, that complicates things in bringing a criminal trial, because there's civil discovery. So anything that comes out in the civil discovery, that information could be put in front of the grand jury. Like when this first happened, the plaintiff's lawyer for the women said, hey, we're bringing a packet of information to the police department, and they can look at this information, and these women want to bring claims. But when the police look at a situation, they're not just looking at the packet of information that the plaintiffs provide. The investigation goes where the investigation goes. The facts go where the facts go. And so from the outside, like I know from a pundit perspective and from a fan perspective, we would like to have closure, and we'd like to know that, yes, we don't have somebody in the league who assaulted 22 women and rooting for that person. That is a hard thing to ask people to do, no matter how talented they are. But the difficulty of this is these cases aren't done. There are still civil cases out there with very serious claims, and how people deal with that uncertainty, with the seriousness of both saying, these are serious claims, and someone saying, this didn't happen. That's a hard thing for us to,
Well, there are very few places. Steph Stradley is joining us here from you. They're Texans chick. You can go check her out online. And there are very few places in the world where this doesn't come into play, right?
Yes.
It came into play with Robert Kraft and a massage therapist in Florida, right? Where there's videotape of you walking in and walking out and where you are and what's captured on videotape and what's legal for these women to capture and record or not record behind closed doors. There's the evidential part of this would be in text messages when a massage therapist comes out. You'll never believe what just happened to me. I can't tell anybody, because that's part of me
I really don't want to get into the known facts about the situation, because there are known facts about the situation that go different ways. I mean, there just is.
Well, there's two sides, right?
And frankly, and just generally, you can prosecute someone just on the word of the woman. Like if there's a disputed case and somebody goes, "This happened to me," you can prosecute that. You can prosecute that. I don't want to get too much into the facts of things, because I know from just a general point of view that the known facts are the things that people want us to know, but they're not complete facts. And it's unfair. Like there's so much unfair speculation all different ways, and people trying to solve the case, or they have a point of view and they're fitting the facts into that point of view. And I totally get that, because there's lots of things that look bad in a lot of different ways, but I don't want to engage in that, because the number one rule with any case, and particularly these types of cases, is we need to keep, one, humanity at the center of our discussions, and two, that it's just hard. This is hard. Like you have.
Well, the first thing that happens on my social media while you collect your thoughts was I have a guy come in saying he's cleared, the grand jury cleared, he's presumed innocent, he should go work. And then a woman comes in and says, "Do you think it's a badge of honor for 22 women to say I was assaulted?" Like that now this is a woman coming into the thread. So the first thought would be, well, where are these 22 women? And the first thought would be like, the last thing in the world you'd want to be is wrapped up in this that far, that to most humans, where there's smoke, there's fire. And then we have to, then lawyers
the only people that have looked at all the evidence to date is the grand jury. Their proceedings are secret. I know that there's some people that have disparaged the district attorney who was working on these cases. And I will tell you that her reputation from both sides of the bar is very good. I think what I feel more comfortable talking about are the things that I know. And the things that I know are that the grand jury process in this case, they were trying to button things up very precisely. Like, like you have a lot of, this case is as difficult to handle as any case, because it's high publicity, it's highly emotional, there's money involved, there's reputation involved, there's ego involved. There's lawyers that have very differing styles in the way that they do their business. Everybody, the fans have points of view based on what they think of a player. It makes it very difficult for people who are making accusations against famous people. It has all the complicating factors.
O.J. Simpson taught us that, right? No matter what, he's really famous. And that's going to play into this, but he's been a good guy all along. That's DeShaun Watson had a pretty good reputation in 3 years ago, 4 years ago.
He had a great reputation before this happened. In fact, one of the things that made this further complicating was, all of the stuff that was happening with the Houston Texans at the time. Jenny Vrentas wrote a big article about how, Jack Easterby had taken over the Houston Texans. She wrote it along with another Sports Illustrated writer, talking about, a former character coach took over as interim GM in the middle of the 2020 season, and all sorts of strange things happened. And then the owner eventually said, okay, well, the new GM we hire will determine whether Jack stays. And it just so happened that the person that he hired is a friend of Jack Easterby's. So when that all happened, allegedly, he didn't speak up one way or another. DeShaun Watson asked for a trade. Andre Johnson, an icon of the Houston Texans, said nothing has happened since Jack Easterby's been in the building. And then shortly after this, it was publicized that these cases were happening. So there's a lot of chaos happening all at the same time, where people are putting their points of view on things. And it's just been kind of like too much in this part of the world, where people in Houston just want like a regular football team.
Well, this comes off the back end of the baseball team cheating and Altuve being wired.
Nope. See, this is another example of people making up narratives not based on factual situations. I mean, saying Altuve was the least culpable in that whole scenario, but there
was guilt there.
What?
There was enough guilt there in Houston to make him associated.
Altuve?
No,
Altuve,
guilt of the franchise. Franchise.
Like so much different than the Yankees, which, by the way, today a federal court has just ruled that the letter that implicated the Yankees prior to what happened to the Astros, that they have to release that letter. And the Yankees, in their filing in federal court, said that it would damage their reputation and it shouldn't be released. But that's a whole separate issue.
Well, but I guess from a sports fan perspective, I'm in Houston.
Yeah.
I just love the Astros. I was a big Oiler fan, as you know.
Yeah.
And by the way, I hung out with Warren Moon a couple weeks ago, so I saw him. So,
nice.
So I would just say this as a Houston sports fan, and I'll have McClain on, and McClain makes all the excuses for the Astros that he can. They're innocent, and like I get all that. Not here, they're not. Because I heard the trash cans, and I know what all that's about, because I'm a baseball guy. But if I'm just a fan there and the team stinks and the quarterback is, whether he's guilty or not, accused, he's now gone, and the franchise is what it is, it's a sticky situation being a sports fan and a professional sports fan in Houston right now of these franchises. It's been tumultuous the last 5 years.
People just want it to be about football. Lovie Smith is about football. Lovie Smith has reached out to prior Texans players and try to get them on the fold. And he has reached out to fans and goes, yeah, I understand why you're disappointed, and we're going to earn your trust. But last year they had David Culley as a coach, and they were telling sports fans that everything's great and nothing bad to see here. And, it was, our culture is all this, that, and the other thing. And it wasn't about football. And there were so many different voices coming out of the building. Lovie Smith is trying to make it more about football. Now, whether it can be about football, I think there's a view, at least some within the organization, that, hey, Watson's gone, we have our picks and everything's solved. I don't think that that's the case, but I mean, that is something done. But if it turns out, there's a whole universe of potential facts that, it may not be one way or another way, but there's a universe of potential facts out there that we don't know about. There is a theoretical universe where Watson didn't do things. There's a theoretical universe where Watson did all the things. And there's a theoretical universe where maybe he did some things, but that it's not going to come to fruition because of conduct of the parties, or maybe there's some sort of settlement that both parties end up, agreeing to. Some of the people that are lauded today as great athletes in their past had things accused of them that were horrific, and that over time maybe facts came out one way or another, or just, their performance just outweighed it. I don't know. I don't know what the future is going to be with this, but it's not Houston's issue anymore, other than the idea that they had a situation where at a minimum, their young, promising quarterback put himself in a reckless situation where this could happen. Like at a minimum, like whoever's version of the facts are, he put himself in a situation that was completely reckless for the starting quarterback of a team to be in.
Well, and all that being said, Steph Stradley's joining us here from Houston. You can follow her work out on the internet at Texans Chick, as well as at the Houston Chronicle, where she blogs and loves football.
Actually, my website that has like the 6,000 words on what to expect in the DeShaun Watson case, that is on my personal website, stephstradley.com.
Perfect.
StephanieStradley.com. It will all get you there.
I would just say this, the Texans wind up getting all these draft picks, right? And, or made semi-whole, and he's off the books and like all that. It's like it didn't happen to some degree. Fresh start with Lovie Smith, not our problem anymore. Cleveland took on a hell of a lot of risk. I mean, for all the things you're talking about, for what could have happened or what evidence there could be, one thing we know that's not going to go away is the allegation in the mind's eye of female fans in the greater northern Ohio area.
No, it's not just female fans. I mean, I think every individual has their own point of view of what they think about this situation. I don't think it's only female fans, and I don't think all female fans feel the same way. But what I will say is, the biggest risk that they have right now is Roger Goodell can do whatever he wants under the standards. Like, people say that the CBA was changed to reduce his role, but if you really look at those changes, as I discussed, he really does still have a lot of decision-making on what he does on things. I mean, he just does. Now that the criminal cases are gone, the NFL will probably have more ability to investigate what went on themselves. Now, their standard of review is there credible evidence that these events happened? And they're not even restricted to looking at, did the thing happen? Like, there have been issues in the past that if they don't get enough cooperation, that can be a suspension. If let's say they think that he was too reckless, they could make a suspension from that, even if they don't think that the events happened. There's any number of ways. Like, really, the biggest difficulty in dealing with anybody accused of anything in the NFL is that Roger Goodell can do whatever he wants. Now, they took on a whole bunch of risk. But the reason why teams take risks on talented players is that they're talented players. I mean, that's like, there's less than 32 quality quarterbacks in the entire universe. And so that's why people go crazy for them. Like, people will give far too much money to bad quarterbacks. And if a quarterback is promising, they will, I guess, give that much money guaranteed.
Well, they found a way to keep Kaepernick out of the league, right? You know what I mean? I did think at one point that until Watson really got cleared and figured this out, that things were still chasing him, that they wouldn't employ him. I'm not taking it back. I'm not taking it back.
We don't know the full evidence that the grand jury saw. And I don't know what the Browns have investigated, at least from media reports, which I don't know is correct. The plaintiff's lawyer has said that nobody from any of the teams reached out to him, and there may be different reasons for that. But I'm fairly certain that all of the teams have reached out to DeShaun's agent and got whatever information that they got from his lawyer and the information that they got in front of the grand jury. Because for the grand jury, if you have early representation from quality counsel in an investigation, any kind of investigation, whether it's a sexual assault investigation or any investigation in this part of the world, the prosecutor wants to know all the information. The grand jury wants to know all the information. And so information is made available. And so in this situation, this is what we know from reported facts. We know that a number of the women were subpoenaed. One of them testified in the grand jury, and the grand jury declined to listen to the rest of them for whatever reasons we don't know. Typically in these cases, the defendant's lawyer will put together a grand jury packet or proffer package where they go, hey, grand jury, we know that you're looking at this situation. This is the information that we know. Now, the grand jury is not limited to the information that is admissible in court. They can hear all sorts of things. For example, in a sexual assault case, it might be one of the things in front of the grand jury that, DeShaun Watson passed a polygraph, conducted by this former FBI agent. And here's all this other information that you might not be aware of that we found in our investigation. And they put all of this stuff in front of the grand jury. And then the grand jury goes, okay, is there probable cause that a crime was committed? And all we know at this point is in that forum, the grand jury said no. And it's unfair to speculate why the grand jury came out a way or to kind of disparage the district attorney for not convicting, because the district attorney's obligation is not to convict. The district attorney's obligation is to do justice. Like, that's an ethical obligation of the court. So all we really know is they didn't find probable cause a crime was committed. Now, does that mean that a civil, the civil courts is like, it's, is it more likely than not that it happened, basically? And so there's a different standard in civil court and different admissibility. Like, for example, if there was, I don't know that there was a polygraph or not, but that wouldn't be admissible in court. But that's something that a grand jury could consider in combination with any number of things. And we don't know what those things are.
Well, aside from all of that,
yeah.
we do know that NFL teams, not by and large, but the teams that needed a quarterback and some that didn't need a quarterback, including Atlanta and Cleveland didn't need a quarterback. They have a quarterback, that they went in on taking on the situation, all that comes with it, whatever that is in the future. That's the not shocking part for me, not even eye-opening, but just level set.
We don't know the information that they have, and they may not be in a position where they can share that information. And so that involves a lot of trust. And that is a very individualized situation. Like, there are things that we know are like everybody agrees on. Everybody agrees on facts, and then there's things that not everybody agrees.
But one thing we can agree on is got a hell of an agent to get that.
Athletes first.
Yeah, I mean, he's got a hell of an agent to created a market for him at this point in a place where most people in Baltimore and other places are like, I'm glad he's in Cleveland just because of what will come with it in regard to can we win this way, which is all, I shouldn't say all that fans care about, but at the end of the day.
To be fair, I mean, it was a very weird situation last year in that he needed to show up to, training camp and all that to get paid. Like, he didn't show up to OTAs and all that because that wasn't required, but anything mandatory, he showed up. Now, and he actually went through drills. And I can't speak to all of the players, but there are players that completely support DeShaun. So that it's a weird situation in that, everybody has different relationships with the people involved. And it's very difficult to talk about while kind of respecting everybody's point of view, because we're not just talking about the people that are at the focus of this, we're talking to everyone. And that's the hard part of a public conversation about something that what we can agree on is we don't know all the facts. We don't
public
know
conversation about something private, something that is inherently private.
And
inherently private, right?
So all of us listening from the outside hear different things based on our experiences. And so when people are saying, da-da-da is lying, it's disrespectful to the women who are making very serious claims. And it's also disrespectful to the people that go, hey, look, we don't try people in the court of public opinion. We try people in court. And this person wants his day in court and has been no-billed by a grand jury who had access to the best information.
Steph Stradley here from Houston, talking all things DeShaun Watson and Texans. And so the Texans chick fan in you, when does this become fun again? And you get to break out that beautiful red, white, and blue logo and the horse head. You're like, when does all that happen there?
There's a lot of mending fences that the Texans team needs to do with a lot of people in ways that I don't think fully see.
Well, there is an arrogance that we are the NFL. You'll come,
And there's a specific arrogance, I think, perceived locally among some people. Like there are a lot of people in town that are Astros, Rockets fans and don't mess with the Texans, and they are college fans. Like as many friends as I have that are Texan fans, I have lots of sports friends who go, hey, tell me when they're good. Tell me when they're normal. Tell me when, it's not painful to be a Texan fan, because really it's like eating cold, slimy vegetables sometimes.
Well, hey, listen, I'm from Baltimore. I watched the Colts deteriorate from the time I was 7 years old and Burt Jones, and then they're gone, and John Elway's over there, and we have no franchise, and we're serving crab. That's how I got to know the business of sports as a 17-year-old lad working at the paper, trying to beg to get it, clawing to get a team back, and then get a team back, and Art brings him here, and you just hope that it isn't what the Orioles have become. You hope that it doesn't stink. And I know as an Oiler fan, through all the Bud Adams and Love You Blue, there were competitive teams, but they never drank from the drink. They've had a couple of Super Bowls in Houston, 3, none of them involved the Oilers or the Texans, right? And so there is I don't say desperation, but sort of a wanting. And I guess the Astros have cashed that check now, and the Rockets cashed it back in, the old days with Akeem and Clyde the Glide and all that. But there is a point for a football fan and an NFL perspective. The NFL left you high and dry, screwed you the way they screwed us here in Baltimore back in '84, and you pined away and you won it. The difference here is our team's been good. Our team came back and everything's purple and it's beautiful, and there's Ray Lewis and there's all this great. There's all this. Houston's sort of waiting for that, and I sense it for 2 decades coming down there for games now, right?
2 decades, and I think part of the issue right now is I don't think that they're communicating very well to their fan base in a way. Like they've had to earn every single fan. The reaction of a lot of fans after the Oilers left was, I don't mess with the NFL, or I root for the Cowboys, or I root for the Titans. Like some Oiler fans ended up rooting for the Titans. And they've had to earn every single one of their fans, right? But most of the time, there is no Texans bandwagon. Most of the time it has, when has there ever been a year where they were the preseason favorite to dominate in the NFL? There haven't been. Maybe 2012 was their
Matt Schaub for a minute.
Yeah. And, and their offense got old when their defense got good. And then the Bill O'Brien era, they won sometimes, but in the Bill O'Brien era, but I don't think that there was a very good connection with those teams, because most of that time they didn't have a quarterback, and then they got the quarterback and they didn't have a defense anymore. So there wasn't really a good sense of belief for that team. And now it doesn't even seem to some people like it's their team anymore. I think Lovie Smith is trying to build bridges. I think Nick Caserio has a great reputation for drafting, but there's questions just generally, he came in a very difficult situation because people thought that there was going to be a new non-New England, non-Jack Easterby start to the organization. And everybody was surprised that the owner said, no, I want Nick Caserio, who was somebody that his father wanted to come to the Texans. And it took many years, there was tampering charges claimed about the Texans when they tried to get him after they fired Brian Gaine after a short period of time. And so it's been kind of too much non-football focus and non-professional focus in a time where that's like all Texan fans want at this point is to not be embarrassing. The DeShaun Watson situation, no matter how it turns out, was a blight on the team. It reflected poorly on everybody involved in the situation. And so it's like, oh, we have a clean start with Watson gone, but we still have the questions that remain with Jack Easterby, who is the subject of the Sports Illustrated articles. And there's a lot of unresolved questions from those articles. And I think the main issue right now is leadership seems to be serving leadership more than it's serving everybody within the team. And that there's the organizational structure, like take the names off of everything. It's hard to have an organizational structure where one of the most influential people is a really good friend of the owner and sees himself as a football person, sees himself as a people person, but other people don't see him the same way. And it's hard to have somebody in that position. And, the way that the Texans have dealt with it is like, we have a new GM, it's Nick Caserio, he's in charge of personnel. And then Jack Easterby is the vice president of football ops and in charge of culture for the whole organization, which basically means he's in charge because other than in personnel. So it's kind of, there's been a tension of who is the leader of the Texans. And when Lovie Smith talks, he sounds like the leader of the Texans. When Nick Caserio talks, he has his own view of the Texans. And then Jack Easterby hasn't talked very much and recently did an interview with two teenagers from Philadelphia in a podcast where he talked about how he added value to the Texans and that's why he got to the place that he was. And that he refused to do on-record interviews with local media since he took credit for re-signing DeShaun Watson. That was the last time that he's spoken publicly. So it's a very weird situation because people want to move on and want to believe in things, but I think the owner may be meddling too much. I think his friend encourages that and sees himself more as a football person than the people that are underneath him. And that's a very difficult situation to have a boss who thinks he's great at things and has a lot of power, and people might not be able to talk to him in honest ways, even though that's what he says he wants.
I had Chris Pike on earlier. I said, job number one when you work for Mr. Blank is to not upset Mr. Blank in any case, and always tell Mr. Blank what he wants to, and I don't mean Arthur. I just mean Blank. Yeah. Steph Stradley here. And no shots at Home Depot. They helped me build my place. I appreciate you, and I appreciate sensitivity and you drawing the hard line on the legal aspect of all of this. But we sit here in Baltimore, and all of our people are like, glad he's over there instead of over here. But the one thing everybody here has said on the football side is he got how much money and how much is Lamar going to get now? Because that becomes the football issue for everyone else is this guaranteed money.
And frankly, if we're just talking about it from a football perspective, I would be interested to see what he could do with good coaching and a defense. Because he literally had terrible coaching with the Texans. Bill O'Brien was his offensive coordinator. He had no running game. And for most of the time, he had no defense.
Well, I don't think there's any question he could play football.
I'm guessing that some people in Baltimore are concerned with that too. I mean, I think the way that a lot of these high profile things go is if he's your guy, you're good with him, or some of people are good with him. And if he's not your guy, then you're going to believe the worst of whatever's said about him. I mean, that's just the nature of any kind of fandom and any kind of high profile, controversial situation. That's just how it goes.
Well, I hope you get back to being Texans chick, and I hope I get back to big old barbecue tailgates out there in Houston outside
The
the
tailgates
Astrodome.
were terrible last year. Just
I know.
Like there's people who this is an exit point for them. They just can't do it anymore because they can't support something they don't believe in.
Oh, I'm that way with the Orioles. They took my press pass 16 years ago. I won't be going to Orioles games. I'm not giving Masson money. I cut my cord. I'm just, wake me when they're concerned with winning. So I feel that all of that as a sports fan, and there's certainly a kinship from a Baltimore football fan to a Houston football fan that borrowed your team for 15 years.
And I think the biggest part of it is that, Lovie Smith's trying to mend fences. And, the Texans are preaching patience, but, there's a point of view here that they are a charitable organization that sometimes plays football and is more concerned with placating leadership than they are with making an environment where everybody can focus on football.
Hey, I appreciate you focusing on some football. We'll focus on barbecue and all that sometime soon. Hope to get back down to Houston, maybe for a concert or some fun sometime along the line. It's always great to have you on.
Done that way.
I'm glad you picked up the phone and came on here and talked about, really sensitive. I mean, there's no doubt about it. I mean, this is one of those ones where I don't take phone calls anymore because, I can just imagine sports radio in Houston, taking calls on this because we did it here with Ray Rice, Ray Lewis 20 years ago, all of that. Steph, I appreciate you, man. Stay well down there, all right?
You too.
Deep in the heart of Texas, she's Steph Stradley. She is Texans chick. You can find me usually where there's a good crab cake, all presented by our friends at the Maryland Lottery, as well as our friends at Goodwill Industries, getting our wise conversations back out on the road. Lots of stops this month. We're doing the Chaucer in Highlandtown. We're doing Greenmount Station in Hampstead. We're going to G&A, Coney Island Hot Dog up in White Marsh to see my good friend Andy, who has put his new business back together, had delicious Spanish omelet because I'm sort of Hispanic when I want to be. I am Nestor. We are WNST, AM 1570, Towson, Baltimore. We never stop talking. Baltimore, positive.